Hello, everybody. I'm John. This is Strategic Investing, and today I had the pleasure of speaking with Xtract One Technologies CEO Peter Evans. We talked about the release of their new One Gateway, a product purpose-built to protect and screen for weapons in schools, office settings, and convention centers. I hope you guys find this information helpful and enjoy the interview. Well, Peter Evans, thanks for coming on the channel again. It's good to have you as always. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very, very well, John. Thanks for having me. It's always good to catch up with you. It's been a very busy week, the GSX last week, a very busy month, and a very busy year.
Well, that's always good to hear as investors. I want to just preface this. I know you've done the webinar when you first announced the product at GSX. You've done at least one interview since then. And so I want to get a little bit more specific, not get too redundant with the questions I'm going to ask here. I will link to those videos when I post this to YouTube. So if after watching this, somebody wants to go check those out, they can easily access those. Really quickly, just to start us off though, just in case anyone hasn't been introduced to this product before watching this video, just kind of give us the basics. It seems like what we're looking at here is moving from what you guys and a lot of your competitors did before as far as analyzing, magnetic interference, weapon, not weapon. Now you're actually categorizing what the object is. Is that right?
Well, that's correct, John. So a little bit of background, as you point out, all of the technologies essentially rely on the same physics to detect weapons. They're looking at magnetic interference of one form or another. And a lot of the differences come down to the architectural choices made by the different vendors, whether it's the old walk-through metal detectors, us, our competitors. And there's some limitations in those physics and the approaches, such that when you get to a point where you've got too much metallic clutter, the systems cannot accurately discern between a weapon or a benign object. And so you get a lot of false signals. And many of the schools, the hospitals, the convention centers we talk to would affectionately call this the laptop problem, in air quotes. Almost 100% of all the laptops would alert if you've got the system set to a level where it will also alert on weapons. And so, that's a challenge, particularly as you start to see more and more of these solutions moving to schools, moving to places like convention centers. Some of the inbound leads that we've had recently due to the prevailing weapons issues continue to amaze me. And so the answer has been, to go through acrobatics, make people carry laptops above their heads or, in the middle of their body where the backpack's gone through the system before the system detects a person has walked through. And then it starts scanning. Well, I'm not scanning the backpack. And you've put risk into the system by doing that. If I'm showing a kid that his laptop won't alert by holding it above his head, I'm showing him a gun won't either.
Yeah.
And so you're adding a lot more complexity. You're adding separation of bags, screening, more security guards. And so we kind of looked at it as technology needs to solve problems, not deliver solutions that have shortcomings that cause an operational nightmare.
Yeah.
And so the more we got out to these various schools and things and to solve the laptop problem, we started looking at different ways of doing the sensors and seeing what we could do about detecting all sorts of different characteristics of both ferrous and non-ferrous metals. And we actually had a happy accident there. So while we achieved the problem of not alerting on a backpack that has a laptop and a 3-ring binder and a Hydro Flask bottle and everything like that in it, but we'll alert if there's a gun or a knife in there. We had a happy accident that we determined that we're gathering so much interesting, unique information about the items, we can actually tell you what item it is. And so if I walk through the laptop, it'll alert and go laptop. If I walk through the gun, it'll alert and go gun. So it completely changes the dynamic. You no longer have to think about, what sensitivity level do I need to be at? 1 through 10, A through G, whatever. And try and find that sweet spot between, okay, I've got this many false alerts, but I'm catching these weapons, but it's not enough weapons, and so now you just think about a menu where I click on a dot that says I want to alert on the laptop on the way out because someone's stealing it, and the earbuds and the cell phone. And I want to alert. Today, I've got Disney on Ice. I'm not worrying about knives. It's a lot of parents and kids. I just want to alert on guns. Oh, tomorrow, I've got the country and western concert where everyone's carrying a knife. Boom, guns, knives. And just think of it like setting radio dots on a menu. So it's an entirely different way of looking at it, and it's object recognition. Complete new dynamic and a complete game changer.
Yeah, no, I mean that sounds pretty. So you can actually subtract things that you would want to alert on as well, like you said about knives. Maybe it's like a production facility, and they allow their employees to carry knives because they're going to use them to open boxes or something like that.
Yeah, everyone's walking with a box cutter. You say, let's not worry about the knives, or let's
Okay.
go in another direction. A lot of the comedians these days don't want people recording their
Hmm.
stand-up routine. You know, Kevin Hart, Bill Burr, whoever.
Yeah.
And so you've got this process with the Yonder bags where the cell phone goes in the bag gets sealed, you can't open it, so you can't record it.
Hmm.
But how do you know if someone's got a second cell phone hidden in
Sure.
their
Yeah.
sock or something like that?
Hmm.
So now we just set the thing up to say alert on cell phones coming in the
Yeah.
building.
Really cool. Really
Yeah.
cool. I think everybody obviously agrees. Game changing, especially something that none of your competitors have at the moment either. It seems like.
Yeah. Well,
When,
the competitive response is to bolt an X-ray machine on, which is
yeah, yeah,
twice the footprint, twice the security people. Interesting enough, moving metal within a 6 foot range
yeah.
causes systems to fail. So now I've got a system that's going to cause the other system to fail. It's kind of fascinating.
Hmm. What actually, speaking of that, it kind of reminds me, with the footprint and everything. You mentioned this a little bit, I think, in the webinar. But
Mhm.
what's kind of is it an all-weather system type of,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, perfect.
Indoors, outdoors. Right now, we're going through our certification process, as you have to by law to sell any electronic product
Hmm.
in North America. And so you're certified for, environmental considerations like radiation emissions, these sorts of things.
Yeah,
Environmentals, doesn't catch on fire and burn the building down.
yeah, yeah.
And so, we're going through all those ratings right now. The system is looking like it'll be fully rated at IP56.
Wow. Okay. Um, One thing I think a lot of at least investors are kind of interested in, and you touched again a little bit on this in the webinar, saying that maybe early next year we could be
Yeah.
looking at sales. Can you give us maybe a little bit more on that, and also as far as production capabilities, because obviously it seems like with this product there's going to be a lot of demand. Do you have the same production capabilities as the Smart Gateway, or what are we looking at there?
Yeah, so two things. Let's clarify sales. We actually already have some orders in hand for the product from people who've done beta tests on it or have come up to the offices in Toronto and kicked the tires on it. So really fascinating conversations going on. We've
Okay.
had some school districts who were in the process of going down the path with another technology, and they've halted that.
Wow.
They've seen the technology and they said, okay, we'd like to do a demo on site. So we're very pleased. So some orders have already occurred. Others are already in process, and people want to get in line and be one of some of the first people getting the system when it comes off the manufacturing line. The timing on manufacturing is somewhat gated by that certification process. You have to finish that process
Okay.
in order to be able to ship a product that's in a permanent installation. You can do betas and trials,
Oh, interesting. Okay.
right? It's against the law to actually ship a technology that doesn't have the CE logo on it, and that has to come and be applied by a third party. So,
Oh,
and of course, you don't want to start manufacturing. Let's say we've gone through all of the certification process and the third party that does that sort of, yeah, this PCB board, it's got a risk that that solder joint could melt because of the heat, and therefore you need to fit the board. The
mhm.
last thing you want to do is go on and manufacture 1,000 of those, right? You want to wait till you
Yeah.
get to the point of being told this thing fully meets all certification requirements, and then you say ramp the manufacturing. Having said that, we were already working with our subcontract manufacturer, and these things we can do with sub-assemblies and building the form factor shell,
Hmm.
and getting that capacity up, and building the jigs and the molds and these sorts of things, and
Gotcha.
getting that capacity ready to be at the same volume as the smart gateway.
Perfect. Perfect. So, speaking of that, almost kind of in comparison to the Smart Gateway as well, when we're looking at, financials here, if we're, investors are trying to obviously how gross margins might be affected like this, costs, comparisons, and, is this going to be more expensive to manufacture? Is this going to be priced higher? I know you're not going to give us any numbers on this, and perfectly fine. I think it's an advantage going against your competition, not knowing that. But as investors, can you give us anything that would help us kind of estimate how this might affect the business moving forward?
Well, sort of two or three thoughts there, John. It's a good question. So let me think about giving you a good answer back. The first is, as you've seen with a smart gateway, and I've kind of talked a bit about before, we're a hardware light, software heavy company.
Okay.
That means that we're, both physically, pick these things up and how much they weigh,
Hmm.
but also in terms of what's required to make the system work. So if you were to open up a smart gateway, there's not a lot to it. It's the software that's the magic.
Okay.
And so we took a lot of that learnings and applied that same sort of industrial design philosophies when we started building the One Gateway. And so in terms of the bill of materials and the costs, let's call it comparable in the same sort of ballpark as what you're seeing from the smart gateway.
Hmm.
So that's good. I think the big differentiator is going to become there's so much more value. If
Sure.
you're a
Yeah.
school and you're sitting there looking at a system where I need an X-ray machine, or I need to separate children from their bags, or every laptop's going to alert, or I have to hold it above my head, or a system where kids just walk on in,
Mm.
there's much, much more value there. So we will price to value based on the incremental value that we are delivering to people like schools without all those extra security staff and processes and things like that.
Okay. That makes sense. Um, uh, One thing that I also kind of want to, getting back to the smart gateway again, but is there any innovations, when you were working through this process, you talked about happy accidents and things like that. Did any
Mhm.
of these innovations trickle into improving the smart gateway?
Not yet.
Okay.
We are constantly innovating the smart gateway. The smart gateway was built, I've often said, like by the arenas and stadiums for the arenas and
Hmm.
stadiums. So it's got certain key capabilities that are unique to those marketplaces and serve them very, very well. But having said that, there's always some things you discover and you go, huh, wouldn't that be great if? Do I think we'll see massive changes to the smart gateway? We're constantly improving it, constantly updating it, not only the AI algorithms, but small changes to the hardware. And we will take some of the things that we've learned from the One Gateway and apply them where we can.
Hmm.
Simple things we learned about cameras and their ability to be used for things like facial recognition that we'll be able to deliver a little bit better on the future smart gateways.
Okay. Yeah, I
Okay.
was almost thinking like could you even use these to supplement like the smart gateway at a sporting event or something where you have people with bags go through there versus people
Yeah.
without bags?
Absolutely. And one of those customers who's placed an order with us already, um, they have got locations where they still have a smart gateway in place and running it every day for all of their employees, a couple thousand employees who go through it every single day.
Hmm.
They love it for that kind of an environment. It's more of an office type environment. They have tested and used about a dozen of the smart gateways. They intend to keep those because they are delivering the value expected for that application.
Mm.
And so I could see multiple customers having a mixed use environment.
Gotcha.
Even somewhere like an arena, if you look at all the arenas, they have to scan all their employees who come into the arena. And in fact, folks like the NFL have recently announced they're now going to do facial recognition for every single person who's going into the arena, not a patron.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
contractors, people working concessions, so there's a very rigorous process around screening employees. Great place for one gateway versus the main fan entrance where a smart gateway would provide that kind of entry experience
Yeah.
you're looking for, purpose built for the arenas.
Gotcha. Another thing, as far as thinking about different venues, we talked. Obviously, the main advantage here seems to be schools with the One Gateway, the new product. Other business settings like you just mentioned. What about hospitals? It seems like that's a place where there are a lot of larger metal objects, things like that.
Mhm.
And also, kind of in your answer to that. I kind of shared with you earlier about the new law that passed in California
Mhm.
requiring a lot of the hospitals to now add weapons detection systems. Can you kind of talk about maybe if you how you guys are thinking about that, if maybe you've already seen some inbound interest?
Yeah. So first off, yes, we have seen a lot of inbound interest at the GSX show. We had a number of healthcare organizations come by, see the product, and now asking for demos. So, that's always pleasing. Second thought is we typically will go through a sales process with a customer and you ask them about half a dozen questions. What are the primary weapons they're looking for? What are they looking for in terms of flexibility for their entry doors? Um, the kinds of items that people are typically carrying in. It's very different if you go to an emergency room entrance than, say, the main entrance of the hospital
Sure.
versus, say,
Yeah.
someone going into the labor and delivery ward.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes you've got a different application of the gateway system for different entrances. So I can see a mixed environment. The more interesting thing to me is something you pointed out about the California law. We're seeing this more and more and more. California has just announced that I think it's by January 1st of 2027, all hospitals will need to have screening technologies in the emergency rooms, in the main entrance, if it's different than the emergency room entrance,
Mm-hmm.
and in labor and delivery, if that's a different entrance.
Mm-hmm.
And that was actually something that one of the California healthcare organizations shared with us. We're seeing this kind of a mandate appearing more and more. A friend of mine in Atlanta said that the local high schools have all been told you will screen patrons coming to Friday night football games.
Oh, wow.
It's now a requirement. I can't remember if the state was Minnesota or Michigan. My memory's failing me right now, but one of them similarly put out a screening mandate for certain environments. In the UK, we've got Martin's Law, which is coming into effect, which is a result of the area underground bombing.
Oh.
One of the individuals affected by that event was Martin. His name was Martin,
Mm-hmm.
and his mother has gone on to present to the United Kingdom governments that they should be starting to do more about screening for weapons and threats. So Martin's Law is essentially coming into effect that says that all venues with 600 or more people must now screen for weapons. So I think more and more and more, you'll see schools, you'll see hospitals, you'll see state regulators requiring that these kinds of environments have to be screened. I've been talking to a lot of investors recently. My opinion is that in the same way that you go into a commercial office building and there's sprinkler systems everywhere and there's
Yeah.
a hose and a fire retardant system there and there's badge access control and there's Wi-Fi in the buildings. Heck, they all have defibrillators now,
Yeah.
right? Going down.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the norm.
Yeah.
And it will become the norm that you have to have weapons detection systems in every one of these venues. I think the
Yeah.
only thing that's been holding it back was how advanced the technology was. And we think we've taken a big leapfrog step in that direction.
Sure. Yeah. The more seamless you make it and easier, non-intrusive, then it's something that's easy to add versus the old metal detectors would be something where it would be a much different.
That's right.
Yeah.
And if you think way back to one of our first interviews, John, we talked a lot about the headbutting that occurs between guest experience and security.
Mm-hmm.
The more security you put into a system, the lower the guest experience.
Yeah.
Digital technology has the opportunity to kind of change that and kind of integrate it. But
Yeah.
a year ago, we weren't there yet. There still was a little bit of a hassle on guest experience when I'm walking with a laptop.
Makes sense.
We think we've leapfrogged that back to be much more transparent now.
Okay. One other thing that I want to ask you is when you think about this, again, we talk about the big opportunity with schools, office buildings, and whatnot. Do you think that this more so increases your actual total addressable market, this new innovation, or would you say that it's more of something that allows you to take a larger share of that total addressable market that was there before if you hadn't had this new one gateway?
Yeah, that's a great question, John. I think I'm going to put a slight nuance in it. I think the total addressable market doesn't necessarily change,
Okay.
but I think it's the kind of think of it like a subsegment that changes. Within the total addressable market, say every convention center in North America,
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot of them who weren't deploying because they didn't want to have the laptop problem.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying, look, I'm going to put a lot of money into something that 100% of everyone coming to every convention is going to alert on.
Yeah.
Think about the last time you went to a trade show, John. 80% of the people are walking around with a backpack
Oh, yeah.
with a laptop and they're going over doing their emails,
Yeah.
right? And so people were sort of sitting on the sidelines saying the cost versus the value versus the annoyance factor, the equation doesn't add up. Now, I think with what we've done with Smart Gateway, it's going to get, sorry, One Gateway, is going to get a lot of those people who are sitting on the sideline to now jump in because the value equation changed.
Makes sense.
Okay, so we'll see that. I think for us personally, for those people who are already in the market of making a decision, we're going to see a higher win rate for our company because we've got such a different value proposition now from the competition.
Okay. Well, I think that's kind of mostly what I had to ask. One last thing that I will ask is really kind of what excites you the most about this innovation, as as far as the opportunity here for you guys.
Wow. I could probably answer that two or three ways. Um, I was in Toronto one day when we had one of these now signed customers come up and kick the tires on the product. And sort of his jaw hit the floor and he looked at me and he says, "Do you guys realize what you built?" And he went on to use another anecdote about, a killer product and who it was going to kill. And it was really, really interesting seeing the customer's reaction. When we did the reveal at the GSX event last week, there was probably about 75 different individuals in the room representing probably 50 different companies. And they kept asking these questions and peppering us kind of like a bit of a disbelief, like,
Hmm.
we haven't seen anything like this before. Can you really do it?
Like,
Yeah,
what's
come
the
on.
catch?
Yeah, come on stage, walk through your background. And they did, and then the next person did, and the next person did. And like we talked about this one customer who I really hope we can put a press release out on, who's got 2,000 employees, and every employee's got something different every day going
Hmm.
through. And just changing those who are like got a little bit of a reticent disbelief look on their face and going like, and they seem to go like, wow. Right. So I'm really excited about getting out in front of as many customers as we can and having them just giddy, seeing about what we can do.
That's really cool. Well, hopefully, maybe this video does a little bit of this. Like I said, I will link for any of you guys that are watching this that think the technology is cool and are maybe looking at it more of a customer than an investor. I'll definitely link those videos, the webinar, and everything, so that they can check that out. But Peter, thank you as always for coming on the channel. Really great to talk to you, and I love all the information we're getting here.
Yeah. Thank you, John. It's always a pleasure catching up with you again. Take care of your little ones and I'll see you soon.
All right, have a good one, Peter.
Bye.